Hello there, welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt. Marshall Sutcliffe with Luis Scott Vargas. And Luis, it is time for us to now transition away from Limited and into the constructed rounds as we work our way down day 2 here. We're heading down into round number 12 as we set the stage for our cut to top 8. And I can tell you that in the feature match area right now, we've got Thierry Ramboa from France. He's playing against Lukas Blohon, our Pro Tour champion from Eldritch Moon. In fact, this is going to be Jeskai Control versus Black-Green Constrictor. Let's head down to the feature match area for round 12 here from Dublin. Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Aether Revolt. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas, and we've got constructed action for you again. This is standard in round number 12. That's Lukas Blohon, his opponent, Thierry Ramboa, and they are ready to go here. We've got Jeskai Control in the hands of Lukas, and on the other side of the table, it's Black-Green Constrictor. Luis, you got an idea for this type of matchup yet? I know it's still, some new decks popping up here.
Well, I know that the Black-Green Constrictor deck is built to play against the Vehicles deck. That's what a lot of the people I know who are playing Constrictor want to play against. They have Walking Ballista and a lot of spot removal in order, like Fatal Push and Murder, in order to interact with the Vehicles creatures. That doesn't serve you quite as well against a deck like Jeskai Control. And Jeskai Control, on the other hand, doesn't want to play against Vehicles, would rather play against Black-Green Constrictor in most configurations. So Lukas can't be too unhappy with this pairing, and overall is just looking to control the game and then end up finishing off with a Torrential Gearhook or Dynavolt Tower, though I suppose not that one. That one's getting exiled.
Yeah, it looks like Thierry's going to go ahead and just take that away with Transgress the Mind.
So a cool thing about Lukas's deck is he's not playing the Saheeli Rai Felidar Guardian combo, which a lot of the Jeskai decks are playing, and he's gotten a lot of mileage out of that because he's going to play against opponents like perhaps if Thierry doesn't know that this is going on, we'll leave up a Murder in order to stop the combo that never materializes.
Yeah, interesting little things pop up here. For example, Lukas Blohon plays on Team Genesis. Thierry Ramboa, he's not playing on Team. That might hurt him a little bit here, right? When you've got a team of 6 and even sometimes more players, sometimes that information hits one of your teammates, and then when your teammates are there, you say, hey, if you play against Lukas, he's not actually playing the combo in his deck.
Yeah, that is very relevant to pay attention to over the course of the tournament. It's getting to the later rounds. But on the other hand, Team Genesis, if they're split among decks, which most teams are, you end up in a spot where that information might not actually carry over.
I see. How long do you think before Lukas has before this is the cat's out of the bag?
The cat is very far out of the bag. There's no cats at all, actually.
There's no bags either.
So I think most players are going to be more aware of that at this point.
A Glint Sleeve Siphoner now for Thierry.
And it actually ends up picking up 2 energy because of the Winding Constrictor. So Lukas chose not to use Harness Lightning on the Winding Constrictor, instead using it on the Glint Sleeve Siphoner. And either way, it was getting countered by Blossoming Defense, but this way he takes less damage.
Lukas really wanted to draw a land there. He thankfully does have another answer to the Siphoner. He's going to use that right now. Of course, that's the second copy of Harness Lightning. Blossoming Defense stifled that last time, but not this time. And that keeps Thierry from cashing in on a card immediately. But the problem is that the shields are very much down now for Lukas Blohon. He doesn't even get to leave up Negate, which he would have liked. He also has a Blessed Alliance in his hand that he would have liked to keep up, and he has neither option after having missed a land drop. Whoa, and here comes Rishkar, and as you can see, Rishkar doesn't bring 1+1/+1 counter, but 2 thanks to the Constrictor, and bang, he takes 4 damage too.
Yeah, that was a big turn. That, combined with missing land drops from Lukas, means that Thierry's firmly ahead because he's got 2 4-power creatures. Lukas can Blessed Alliance to make him sacrifice one of them, but Lukas can't cast Glimmer, is very far away from casting both Torrential Gearhooks in hand, and Thierry can easily deploy all of his cards.
Lukas, having missed 2 land drops, very difficult to come back. These creatures are huge. Let's see what Thierry has here.
Double energy off the hub, thanks to Constrictor too.
Yeah. Okay, so make you sacrifice one of them. He's going to choose to keep his Winding Constrictor in play and knock Lukas down to 10. And he's got a walking ballista that he's going to play for 1, but of course he gets an additional counter on it. And then on top of that, man, he is just going off. A long tusk cub. He's going to cash in all of his energy for 2+1/+1 counters, but once again, that's their double. So now he has 4. It's just a 6/6 for 2
Winding
mana.
Constrictors generated 5+1/+1 counters and 3 energy this game, or 2 energy this game.
And it looks like it may have generated a game win as well, as Thierry Ramboa picks up this first game. Lukas Blohon stuck on 3 lands, and his deck really needs to keep hitting its land drops to keep up. He wasn't able to do that, and that means that Thierry Ramboa is going to pick up this first game here in round 12. We've got more Magic for you coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.
Put what you've learned from watching the Pro Tour into action and compete to become the champion of your favorite game store. Test your skills and your new standard deck at Game Day. Top finishers are awarded special Game Day prizes, including full art premium promo cards and a champion playmat for the winner. Aether Revolt is now available in Magic Duels. Build endless deck combinations with more than 1,000 unique cards. Play through hours of story with over 50 campaign missions. Play Magic Duels free today on Xbox One, Steam, iPad, and iPhone.
Hello there, welcome back to Dublin, Ireland. We're here for Pro Tour Aether Revolt. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas, and we're in round number 12. We are back in Standard. We're going to be playing Standard for the duration of the tournament, including tomorrow. And our main feature match, they're just getting finished up here as far as getting shuffled, and they're going to start resolving mulligans here. Lukas Blohon from the Czech Republic playing against Thierry Ramboa from France.
How many mulligans do you think each player is hoping to resolve?
Say 0.
Yeah, that seems like the right number.
Yeah. Some people like a challenge.
That's true. So one of the key things about that last game, by the way, Blossoming Defense is seeing a lot of play in these black-green decks, and it's a way to trade 1 mana for more than 1 mana. In this case, it countered a Harness Lightning, so it's essentially gained an extra mana. So kind of interesting seeing in such a fast game, because this is such a fast standard format, that Thierry being able to play 2-drop into 2-drop plus Blossoming Defense countered Lucas's 2-mana spell, and Lucas just didn't have enough time to play all his cards, and didn't have enough mana to play all his cards. So when your games are lasting like less than 7 turns, being able to trade a 1-mana spell for a 2 or 3-mana spell is really important. Yeah,
he had such a critical turn there. Turn 4, Lucas missed his land drop. He felt like he needed to use Harness Lightning to kill a Glint Sleeve Siphoner. And man, if he would have had an untapped mana there, he could have left up a removal spell or a negate as well and probably kept himself in that game. But one critical land drop later, and Ramboa is able to take over. Lucas on 6 already? Perhaps both? What, are you seeing 7 or 6?
It looks like 7 to me. Okay. Lucas doesn't have white mana. He's got a hand without, Torrential Gearhulk, Glimmer of Genius, and it looks like a Jace Unraveler of Secrets. So his only white card is Immolating Glare, but that's also his only early play. So this is actually a hand he's got to think about here. Since if he keeps this and doesn't draw a white source, he's got no plays for until something like turn 4.
Glimmer of Genius, yeah.
Like, this is the kind of hand that gets run over by Constrictor into anything. Or really just any 2-drop plus another 2-drop or a 3-drop.
Now, if he had a Plains on top of his library, does he get to alleviate all that pressure?
If he had a Plains on top of his library, I think he would just keep this hand. Because he can Immolating Glare, and hopefully that can buy him time to cast Glimmer, which can buy him time to get to other spells. The fact that he's on the play certainly does help, but this is not a hand he's happy to look at.
He's not. Doesn't look happy looking at it either. He's just staring at it like, can you please turn into a white mana source? See if he decides it's worth the keep or not. He knows it's going to be risky. He's asking himself, how many white sources do I have in my library? How many are untapped? And he's kept it. Does get the advantage of being on the play here. There's an Attune with Aether for Ramboa.
Well, Port Town shows up right on time, so even better than a Plains in this case.
And there's that Whining Constrictor on turn 2 for Ramboa. So things working out nicely for both players as far as our game plans go. Lukas Blohon has certainly drawn himself out of this potentially awkward color situation here with a pair of Port Towns off the top. This is going to be Immolating Glare. And that's really what Lucas had in mind when he kept this. Find a white source, keep a threat away.
And then follow up with the Glimmer. Though Tireless Tracker is fairly annoying because if Lucas lets that live, then starts generating clues. And actually, Thierry has a Evolving Wilds in his hand. So look, he'd actually be able to generate 2 clues right away.
Is he going to use the Harness Lightning right now?
I think there's a pretty good chance of that, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to do that. He even gets an energy out of the deal and can leave up 2 mana.
Actually, I think there's a really good chance of that now. I'm going to say 100%.
He passes the turn back to Ramboa. Does he have another Tireless Tracker? Whoa, he's got another 2 Tireless Trackers.
He's not running out of those. And despite having Evolving Wilds, playing Forest to leave up Blossoming Defense is a good play because now if Lucas tries to kill or bounce the Tireless Tracker, then the Blossoming Defense just completely negates that.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of it, next turn he can play a second Tireless Tracker and then the Evolving Wilds, and then there's clues just flying everywhere.
Yeah, it just has clues for days.
It is risky here, right? Because one of the lines that Lucas has is to play Jace and bounce a Tireless Tracker. But like you said, this really wrecks his day because it means that his Jace gets to die here. Wow!
Thierry spent 1 mana to counter a 5-mana spell. Lucas gains a couple life because the tracker has to attack Jace instead of Lucas, but still 1 mana for 5 mana.
That's
and then
insane.
Play a second Tireless Tracker, play Evolving Wilds, have a million clues, be up on mana, be up on cards, have 2 threats on the board. Torrential Gearhulk has a lot of work to do in that case.
No, looks like he's actually going to play the Evolving Wilds now, before the second copy of Tireless Tracker. He must have another play lined up that he'd like
Oh,
better.
he's got a Fleet Wheel Cruiser. So
okay.
he looks like he's gonna run that out and just send Tireless Tracker at Jace and attack the Fleet Wheel Cruiser directly at Lukas, which also does play around something like Fumigate or Radiant Flames.
Right. There's a cruiser. So now he gets to hit Lukas for 5, still kill Jace, and have 3 clues on the battlefield. And Lukas keeps drawing cards like he's got Disallow and a pair of Glimmer of Genius in his hand. Those look woefully slow as the board has developed. Also does not have his 6th land yet to be able to make sure he can cast that Gear Hulk. So he's going to dig for that now in the main phase.
What Lukas really wanted to see was land plus Harness Lightning. Maybe that was a bit too much to ask for.
He ended up with 2 lands. So he knows he's going to take a beating this turn, but at 15 life he can take a hit.
More Tireless Trackers. See, the second Tireless Tracker can crew the Fleet Wheel Cruiser.
Yes.
And here he can even sacrifice a clue now to get in for 9 points of damage, dropping Lukas to 6 and putting Lukas in a very, very precarious position. This black-green deck is getting so much value over this Jeskai deck. Like,
unbelievable.
Thierry is, despite being nominally the aggressive deck, he's up on cards, up on board position, up on life. He's even hitting his land drops that Lukas has had trouble doing as well. So even like the Haymaker play that you always want of Torrential Gear Hulk, into Harness Lightning, kill one of your creatures, which Lukas, has the option to do, or Immolating Glare, still doesn't quite get Lukas out of this. And Thierry even has Murder in hand to kill the Gear Hulk itself. So
jeez.
This is just a case of Thierry just having it all. Like, he actually does have, like, he had the Blossom defense when he needed it. He had the Tireless Trackers and the Fleet Wheel Cruiser. It's going to be pretty difficult to imagine Lukas coming back into this game.
Yeah, I think we've identified that Tireless Tracker is good in this matchup. Also, he drew 4 of them. He's going to play 1 to crew the Fleet Wheel Cruiser and leave himself up 3 mana behind. Now we're going to see a Murder. And that should be the match. And that's game. Thierry Ramboa improves his record to 10-2. And really a convincing victory there against Lukas Blohon. That was a beating.
Yeah, that was not a particularly close. Thierry just ran Lukas over with, well, an actual literal Fleet Wheel Cruiser, along with a bunch of Tireless Trackers.
Now, in our other matches, we've got Martin Juza, and we're going to actually jump over that match. He's from Team Channel Fireball Fire. He's playing against Ben Rubin from Team D3 Go. And as we come in here, Martin Juza has won a game.
So what we have here is Martin playing a deck of his own design. And actually, I don't know, no other members of his team played this deck. It's Jund aggro and with an energy theme. And then he's playing as Ben Rubin playing a black-green Delirium. So not even like as aggressive of a black-green deck as we've seen in other places.
Uses board looking pretty decent here, though Ben Rubin has kind of gone over the top of him by playing just much bigger creatures, at least at this juncture.
Martin really looking to hit his 5th land for his own Virtuous Gear Hulk. But the fact that he's a little bit more aggressive, he's got a Heart of Kiran, which can maybe start flying over if he wants, means that Martin is not in too bad a shape, especially if Ben feels compelled to leave his creatures back. And also Martin has 5 energy over there, so that Long Tusk Cub could become a 4/4 on command.
Okay, there's Heart of Kiran. And no attacks here from Juza. He recognized that Ben certainly has the bigger creatures on the battlefield as the board sits.
With another Gear Hulk in hand.
So both players have a Gear Hulk in hand. But Ben Rubin has 5 mana. Wow, this could get gross.
Ben has a second copy of Rishkar as well, though being legendary, he's not in a hurry to cast that one.
Here it is, another Verdurous Gearhulk.
All right, so Ben can split the counters now, obviously in many different ways. The question is whether he wants to actually start attacking with one of the Gearhulks, especially in the face of Heart of Kiran, which Ben doesn't have, an immediate answer for. Though it looks like he's got a Fatal Push in hand, so given enough time, he will eventually be able to deal with it. Still, that Gearhulk pressuring Martin does give Ben a pretty good advantage and a way to utilize the fact that he's got 2 big blockers. Martin can't attack into them, so he might as well start getting pressure through.
Martin's got an interesting decision here. He's facing down an 8/8 with Trample, but he can crew the Heart of Kiran, and he can even put some counters on his Long Tusk Cub.
Yeah, he could throw those 2 in front, trade a Long Tusk Cub and a Heart of Kiran, and 4 energy for the Gearhulk. Not too bad a trade, especially given that Martin has his own Gearhulk in hand that he wants to survive to get to.
Yeah, another thing that's advantageous here is that Ben Rubin's completely tapped out at this juncture, so Martin knows that he's not taking on incredible risk by making this play.
It's actually even better to triple block here. Gives Ben the option of killing the Voltaic Brawler, but
you don't mind that as much. Huh?
You don't have to spend as much energy. So Ben, if Ben layers like Long Tusk Cub, then Kiran, like no matter where Ben puts the Long Tusk Cub, Martin has to spend 2 energy on it, but he doesn't have to spend more than that at least. So this will force Martin to spend 2 energy on Cub.
To save it.
To save it. Well, it looks like Cub is first, so...
Oh, Cub is first.
But if he doesn't spend 2 energy on Cub, Ben gets to kill all 3 creatures. So even though Cub is going to die if it's first, he wants to spend 2 energy on it just to have his other 2 creatures die and the Heart of Kiran survive.
Yeah, and this makes a lot of sense, right? You mentioned the Fatal Push that Ben Rubin has in his hand, so he's trying to set the board up to get maximum value from that by destroying the Heart of Kiran with it. Ben, with 2 huge attackers left over, the Scrappy Scrounger not looking super great, and the Fatal Push basically able to make it into a non-blocker, that Heart of Kiran. So here's a Tireless Tracker, but still no land drop for Martin Juzin. He's falling behind pretty quickly here.
Yeah, had Martin hit a 5th land in order to play the Verdurous Gearhulk, things may be a little different. But even with that Fatal Push in hand, Martin's pretty well protected, or Ben is pretty well protected against Martin's Gearhulk, because it can just kill any of the other creatures that get counters. So Martin would have to put all the counters, or most of the counters, on the Gearhulk to really amass a good blocker.
Interesting.
Rarely seen a Rishkar as 2+1/+1 counters, a Life Crafter's gift.
Indeed. So explain what he did there.
He cast the second copy of Rishkar. Because it's legendary, he just chose to keep the first one, but you still get the trigger, so he put a ++1 counter on both the Verdurous Gearhulk and the Rishkar Puma Renegade.
And man, he's slamming now.
Which gives Ben highly advantageous attacks here. If Martin tries any double blocking, then Fatal Push definitely destroys Martin, and if he doesn't, he's taking 13 damage, which would drop him to 7 here. Basically, we've gotten to the point where Ben has cast multiple copies of Gearhulk and Martin has not cast any, and Martin's like Scrap Heap Scroungers and Voltaic Brawlers just don't match up well against that.
Yeah, and he doesn't feel good about this block because of the potential for a blowout, which is going to be realized here.
Looks like Ben is content just to trade here.
Ah, okay, he's going to keep Fatal Push in hand because he's got a follow-up play that's reasonable here, a Gifted Aetherborn.
And he may be worried about something like Blossoming Defense. Martin drawing another Verdurous Gearhulk. If he had a 5th land, he could actually stabilize here. He could make a gigantic Verdurous Gearhulk, and then Ben couldn't attack with Rishkar and would only be able to attack with the Gifted Aetherborn because of Death Touch. But still, that would put Martin in an actual decent spot. 2
removal spells in hand now for Ben Rubin. He's considering firing up one of those Hissing Quagmires, it looks like.
Martin better hope he does, because if he didn't, then Ben could leave up Grasp of Darkness and cast Grasp, killing the Verger's Gearhulk that Martin would play in response to getting the counters.
I see.
But this also still...
This is not great for Martin Juzza either, is it?
This also basically puts Martin dead on board anyway, because neither of the Scrap Heap counters can block, and Ben now has one lethal threat in Rishkar and then two power creatures, so it's going to be very difficult for Martin to stabilize here.
Martin did not find a land. He found a Long Tusk Cub with his draw step. He's going to have to settle for that as a chump blocker here. But as we see, Grasp of Darkness is going to kill the Cub. Even though he can make it into a 3/3, it still would die.
Yeah, I think Martin should be at 3.
This was, we had this in the Quagmire, which was 6, 8, 10.
Okay.
So they're just getting that corrected.
Not that it's super relevant, because once this Fatal Push happens, Martin is just dead anyway.
Yeah, Fatal Push. Finish things off, and that is going to do it for that one. Now, as we came into the match, Martin was up a game, and that means that Ben Rubin simply equalized, and we're going to get a game 3 between these decks, and I think that's great. That looked like a pretty interesting match as it played out. I'm sure Martin will be a little frustrated that he didn't hit that 5th mana to get those Verger's Gearhulks going, and really felt the major pressure of the opposing Verger's Gearhulks. But maybe in the next game he can get those going. That leaves one other match as well going. Jeremy Dizani. He's on Team Haruya. On the other side is Ivan Floch. He is from Face to Face Games. And bang, he's got a Gideon on his side. Ivan playing a deck a little different than what we're used to seeing him play. It looks like he's bashing in with the Mardu vehicles here. Jeremy's also on Mardu vehicles.
Yeah, even at a precarious 1 life, but against Jeremy Dizani with no cards in hand at the beginning of the turn and no board besides a Shambling Vents that can force a chump of a Knight token, but still puts even in a pretty good spot.
Attack you for lethal.
Yeah.
Toolcraft Exemplar.
A lethal
as well.
Toolcraft Exemplar.
Indeed.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, Pionalar off the top for Ivan Floch.
Pionalar is what you're looking for. Actually, that is just straight up lethal, because it can make the Toolcraft Exemplar unable to block,
Yep.
+1 Gideon, attack for exactly 10.
Yep, and he just did that, and that was it. Ivan Floch takes down the match 2-0 from Jeremy Dizani. Jeremy's now 9-3 on the tournament, so not any wiggle room left for Dizani. He needs to run it up if he's going to make it to the top 8 here. Remember last time we were in Dublin?
He won the tournament.
He won it. He just won the dang thing. Ivan Floch, on the other hand, stays with just 2 losses on his record at 10-2 and has a little bit of wiggle room. And we could see him in the top 8.
Yeah, either of these players could be a repeat Pro Tour champion.
Indeed. Let's get back to Ben Rubin versus Martin Juzza. Ben's in the Hall of Fame. He's been playing a lot lately.
Yes, he's kind of getting back into it. Tested with Team D3 Go, Team Puzzle Quest, the Pantheon umbrella of teams, and they largely ended up on Mardu vehicles. Ben went his own way, as he tends to do with his black-green deck. And he's got a slightly different black-green deck than a lot of people. A couple more one-ofs, 1 Sylvan Advocate, 1 Mind Rack Demon, as he does. Also, blue lands for sideboarded Metallic Rebukes. Just a lot of just like the cool little touches that you expect from Ben Rubin. He actually made the finals of Grand Prix Oakland with a 64-card standard deck just last year.
I remember that.
Yep.
Ben getting a quick count.
Yeah, pile counting, the one time you're allowed to per game.
Do you think he's counting to 64?
I know that when he played 64 cards in his constructed deck, his opponents who would pile count him would also be like, wait, this is 64. He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's confirmed. You've tested a lot with Martin Juzza, have you not?
I have. He was a member of the original Team Channel Fireball. Played with him many years. He's on Team Channel Fireball Fire now, and I got to drop in on their testing process a number of times, as did you, actually.
Yeah.
And Martin, a renowned limited player, 2 Pro Tour top 8s, Pro Tour Austin and Pro Tour Berlin, actually. And he kind of lamented how he wasn't winning drafts coming into this weekend, and then he ended up going 5-1 in draft at the Pro Tour. So he's not unhappy with that result, though. You know, he's 11-1 in draft so far in this Pro Tour season, so making a strong case for himself as the draft master.
You can notice that the players are wearing headphones in our feature match area.
Normal shuffling? I did before. If you'd like to judge the shuffling.
Martin's just asking, did you actually shuffle my deck?
I didn't see the
and Ben said, yeah, I did before. They're wearing the headphones so that they can't hear the commentary. There's actually a viewing area here in Dublin with a bunch of spectators out behind the players, and they can hear us. And if they could hear us, if the players could hear us, then of course we talk about their cards in their hand and their lines of play and that kind of thing. So we have them wear the headphones. Now those microphones, though, go to each other because, of course, you need to communicate in a game of Magic, so it makes sense. All right, Attune with Aether is going to kick things off here for Martin.
Attune part of how Martin manages his 3-color aggro deck. You know, the aggro decks in this format, they have a couple different approaches. Martin uses Attunes, and the Marta Vehicles deck uses more actual lands, Spire of Industry being part of it. Also see a cool synergy here. If Martin wants to play a Greenbelt Rampager on turn 2, the Attune allows him to do that too.
All right, there's the Greenbelt Rampager, turn 2. I love that card.
Yeah, it's a very cool card.
It's a super cool card, and it's really powerful too. I mean, yes, it's turn 2, but he's got a 3/4 sitting there, and that dodges some of the removal in the format. It could be a real problem, especially if you're planning on attacking on the ground.
It's just the stats. 1 mana for a 3/4 is just, you know, not reasonable stats.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it is vulnerable to Fatal Push, and looks like Ben has the option to do that if he so desires.
Is he considering if he wants to maybe do it on his opponent's upkeep here?
So one reason to do it on main phase is that if Martin has Blossoming Defense, then you would end up in a spot where you take extra damage. But on the other hand, by doing it on Martin's turn, it makes Martin use the mana on his turn. Either way, it's immaterial. Martin doesn't have a Blossoming Defense, but it's the kind of thing you do want to think about.
So the elephant gets pushed down. And let's see what Martin can do to add back to the board. Remember, he's the one on the play this game. And he's trying to be the aggressor. Very nice. Tireless Tracker for Martin Yuza.
Yeah, Tireless Tracker, a key card, especially in post-board games, in many of these matchups, just where you're really just trying to get as many 2-for-1s as possible.
It looks like Ben Rubin's happy to just keep 1-for-1ing with Martin. He's now answered both of his threats with spot removal. In this case, it was Ruinous Path. Oh, but another Tireless Tracker for Martin. He's got the land to follow it up as well. And you know how those go. They get out of hand quickly.
They do, and it also leaves you in a position where even if the Tireless Tracker is dealt with after, say, 2 turns, Martin drew two extra cards off clues over the course of those turns, and that means that you know, Ben is significantly far behind.
Well, put on your seatbelts. Here comes a Tireless Tracker from the other side of the battlefield. I wonder if Martin has an answer for it in his hand.
Well, he doesn't have an answer as much as he just has a Virtuous Gearhook, which leads to just a huge attack. And if he just goes land number 5, Virtuous Gearhook, put at least 2 counters on my Tireless Tracker so it can attack past your Tireless Tracker, Martin just becomes really far ahead. And this is where being on the play is a significant advantage.
Yeah, that Gearhook acts as such a big tempo swing. Also, he has Ben Rubin tapped out at the moment. Makes his play a little bit more clean about where he wants to put the counters and that kind of thing.
So if you're worried about removal on Tireless Tracker, you want to put as few counters on it as possible. Though, again, you would like to put 2 counters on it so it can attack past the opposing Tireless Tracker. And that way, even if a removal spell ends up happening to one of your creatures, Martin ends up with either a 6/6 Gearhook or a 5/4 Tireless Tracker. Could also put more counters on the Tireless Tracker to get more damage in now, But the downside of that is Tireless Tracker's already your most valuable creature, and if it gets killed by something like a Murder, then you're going to end up feeling like you wish you had put more counters on the Gearhulk. But I think the right number is either 2 or 3 counters on Tracker. I think 4 on Tracker is a bit much, and 1 is too few.
Okay, he ended up being maximum aggression while still hedging a little bit here. He put 3 counters on it. Attacks for 6. Ben Rubin, interestingly, some of the cards in his hand, you know, you can see he's got a pair of Grim Flayers, Verdurous Gearhulk in hand as well.
Wow, Ben really got punished for the blue splash here. Ben drew a Botanical Sanctum, which will enter the battlefield tapped here, which means Ben cannot cast his own Verdurous Gearhulk.
Oh, wow.
And I know if you're Martin and you see Ben cracking a clue to Tireless Tracker, you're very happy with that.
Yes. Martin also perhaps thinking one turn ahead here. His Tireless Tracker with 5 toughness, still able to attack through the opposing Tireless Tracker even after a clue is cracked there. But you know what? Ben's going to immediately play a land and re-crack the clue. So he does nothing this turn to affect the board directly outside of 2+1/+1 counters on the Tireless Tracker. And Martin User would love to see a removal spell off the top of his library here.
A removal spell or another Gearhulk would almost seal the game for Martin here.
Well, that's not what he found. He found a Voltaic Brawler.
Martin still gets to attack with the Tireless Tracker, but the Gearhulk does trade with Ben's Tireless Tracker because there's 5/4 versus a 5/5. You get a point of trample damage through at least.
So he may as well attack with both. Does he mind trading at this point?
You would like to trade because it's
Gearhulk, found a Gearhulk.
1 draw step too late, but I actually think it's still going to work out all right for Martin because now he gets to play land, make another clue, attack with both. Ben's pretty much forced to trade for the Verdurous Gearhulk. It'd be very risky to not trade that. Take 6 from the Tireless Tracker, 1 from Trample, drop to 7 life. Martin plays 2 more creatures, and then next turn has a Gearhulk as follow-up. So this is all really working out well for Martin.
Did Martin forget his energy trigger there from the Aether Hub?
Looks like he did not put an energy.
Yeah. He did get the clue, though. Okay, so that trade happens, but like you said, he's just setting up for next turn so beautifully here with a pair of 2-drops and then a Verdurous Gearhulk next turn. All right, well, he got that energy trigger anyway.
Yeah, but having a Gearhulk as your last card in hand when you have 3 creatures in play to your opponent's none, that is exactly where you want to be.
That is gross, yeah. So is Ruben forced to just play a massive Gearhulk here?
Played 8/8 Gearhulk, but Martin would just have lethal out. So Ben would want to. He needs to play 2 blockers. He needs to block the Tireless Tracker and then block the Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Does he have that option?
He can play Grimflayer plus a Rishkar Pima Renegade, or he can play Winding Constrictor plus Rishkar Pima Renegade.
Okay.
End up with a 4/4 and a 4/5, which doesn't necessarily leave him in the best position, but he certainly gets to live that way. Unfortunately for him, the follow-up Gearhulk from Martin, I think, should finish the game off.
Yeah, especially because of Voltaic Brawler. He's going to opt to play all 3 of his 2-drops. No Rishkar here, but a pair of Grim Flayers.
Ben can survive, but it's going to require him to lose almost all of his creatures here. So what Martin can do is he can play the Gearhulk. He can put counters on the trampling Voltaic Brawler once he spends an energy. Does give him the force Ben to block it with at least Winding Constrictor. And then Ben can just attack with everything. And each one of, Winding Constrictor has to block the Brawler. And then the Grim Flayers. Well, actually, Grim Flayers are 4/4s. There's instant sorcery land creature. So the 2 4/4 Grim Flayers actually end up making the blocks a little bit trickier for Ben, or for Martin, but he still has enough power and toughness here to force Ben into a situation that Ben doesn't really want to be in. Like, you could put 1 counter on the Scrap Heap Scrounger, then it can trade.
Yep.
The Tireless Tracker is already big enough, has to be blocked, and then the Brawler you can make big enough that it tramples over if Ben doesn't block it with at least one of his creatures.
Okay, here we go. Verdurous Gearhulk.
Yeah, so I imagine 1 goes on the Scrounger, and then at least probably 2 or 3 on the Brawler, but potentially, I guess if he wants to make the Scrounger survive, he could also just put 1 there. And this is going to force Ben. What you want to do is force Ben into 3 individual blocks, because that means that you get the most value total. I also would distribute 4 counters total, not 5. Because if you put 2 counters on the Brawler, it'll attack with 5 toughness once you spend the energy, which does leave you with the best configuration going forward.
All right, and in they go. He is going to spend the 1 energy on the Voltaic Brawler as well. So does Ben Rubin have the luxury of double blocking anything here?
He can double block the Voltaic Brawler and chump the Tireless Tracker.
Take 5
fall to 1 from the Scrounger. So it'll mean trading a Grimflayer for the Brawler. Winding Constrictor dies, and you fall to 1. So Martin loses the Brawler. Ben loses Winding Constrictor from Grimflayer and goes to 1. Is one of his options. He can also trade Grimflayer for the Scrap Heap Scrounger, lose both his Grimflayers, and then fall. He takes 5, 6. He takes 2 points of trample damage there.
Okay, block, block, block. Pass the turn back. This better be good for you, Ben Rubin. He found a Gifted Aetherborn.
He's 1 mana short of playing Gifted Aetherborn into the Verger's Gearhulk, making a 6/7 lifelink Death Touch.
Oh, he's so close.
But not quite there.
He can do the Rishkar, though. Is it enough?
So Aetherborn essentially, if it gets into combat, sets Ben's life total to 7. So Aetherborn blocks something like Tireless Tracker, Rishkar, blocks the Verger's Gearhulk. You take 1, 5, 6. You go to 1. That is one of the potential options. So once again, Ben, I think, is managing to hang on here, but not by very much at all.
And remember, there's these clues here, too, so Yuza can find any number of cards. Did he find his own Rishkar there?
He found a Rishkar, and I think he found a Verger's Gearhulk as well.
Oh, jeez.
Verger's Gearhulk adding 4 more points of trample means that I have to believe Martin can push through lethal here. Because you end up with 8, 13, 14 points of trample, and Ben has 4 toughness he can throw in the way, plus chumping Tireless Tracker. So I think Martin's going to be able to take this one home here.
Yeah, this has been a battle of Gearhulks for sure. When we first came in, we saw Ben Rubin. He was the one with all the Gearhulks while Martin Yuza couldn't quite find the mana to cast his. But this game, even though Ben has 2 of them in his hand, Martin Yuza was the one to deploy them first, being on the play. And boy, as he leveraged the power of that, in comes a massive attack again from Martin Yuza. In fact, it is lethal. Ben Rubin extends the hand, and that's going to do it. Martin Yuza improves to 10-2. Ben Rubin says, I did not win. And that's going to do it for round 12 action here for Standard. Of course, we'll keep continuing our way through the day here. Welcome back to the booth. But that was great stuff down in the feature match area from our players. All across the board, I like seeing the different types of decks that we had. Lukas Blohon specifically with the Jeskai Control, a completely different take than a lot of the black-green, or in some cases, Martin Yuza. You know, he's playing Jun, he's playing red in there as well. A lot of people really kind of beat down, and then we had a Mardu Vehicles Mirror in the other deck. So a lot of fast matches here, and then occasionally you'll get a Lukas Blohon type who's like, nah, I think I'll slow things down a little bit.
Though their match ended up finishing out pretty quickly.
Yeah, it did actually end up going quickly. That was mainly because
not great news for the Jeskai Control deck, let me tell you that much.
Yes, you do want the game to go longer for that. But yeah, really cool stuff down the stretch here. That was round number 12. We've got a few more rounds today before we cut to our top 8. We're moving right through here, and things are shaping up pretty interestingly here. You know, this round, everybody in the feature match area was 9-2 coming in, you know, which is good position for top 8.
Very good.
But you still need to put things together.
Oh, yeah.
Having won this round, of course, will be a big relief for these players, but they've still got further to go down the stretch. And you know how things can go late in the day. They've been playing for a couple of days straight now. Maybe the nerves start to kick in a little, and we're going to be bringing you all of that for the day. For now, though, let's head back to the news desk and Brian David Marshall.
to the news desk. Back to standard. Going to give you a couple quick score updates here. I can tell you, Hall of Famer Tsuyoshi Fujita, a member of Team Last Samurai, and you know, it's been a long time since Tsuyoshi Fujita played actively on the Pro Tour. He was playing against Greg Orange this week, this round, and you know, Greg Orange, who started at Pro Tour Avison Restored, probably hasn't seen Tsuyoshi Fujita very often on the Pro Tour since he's gotten to the Pro Tour, but Tsuyoshi Fujita was the player who won that match. He goes to 8-4, the first Japanese player to ever top 8 a Pro Tour. Now, another match, Alexander Hayne, of course, we talked about Pro Tour Avison Restored with Greg Orange. Alexander Hayne won Pro Tour Avison Restored, and he goes to 9-3, member of Team Face-to-Face Games. He goes up over Charles Wong this round. You may have seen Charles Wong in the background when we did the Team Hot Sauce Games video. He was one of the players that they brought into that house to sort of pad out their roster, even though it was 6-player teams. You saw Jim Davis, the Star City Open superstar, Charles Wong, and a couple other players there, so they could get themselves to 8 players for practicing real-life draft. But Alexander Hayne wins that match. He goes to 9-3. Another match that was on the floor, Eduardo Sajgalek. He goes to 9-3. He's a Pro Tour top 8 competitor from Pro Tour Return to Ravnica, and he defeated Sam Pardee. Sam falls to 8-4. Sam Pardee, of course, recently got his first Pro Tour top 8 of his career at Pro Tour Eldritch Moon. I can tell you another player who's doing very well. You know, again, you see 3 losses. Players are still alive for top 8. You know, once you get that 4th loss, it's going to end up being tiebreakers or stuff like that. Sean McLaren, the 2-time Pro Tour top 8 competitor, he's and who finished first at Pro Tour Born of the Gods, defeated Gary Lau of Australia. So I can tell you right now, though, we have a deck tech waiting for you. It is Hall of Famer Willie Adel who's going to walk us through a deck his team played in the capable hands of our own Gabby Sparts.